Hello class. We're going to look at assignment 2 in this video. Assignment 2 is going to serve as your first introduction to PHP for this course. So we're going to cover a lot of the basics of PHP, and it's just a really simple pass-through application. If we go ahead and look at the assignment, your page that you're looking at may differ from what I'm showing you here, but it's essentially the same. So we'll look at a diagram of how this is going to work. You're going to create a default page that we'll call index. That's the page that we land on. It'll have a login, password, and submit button. And we'll go through what's called a pass-through or processing page. This page never appears in the browser. We just pass right through it on our way to one of these other pages. And then based on your login and password, you will land on either page 1, 2, 3, or the error page. If we come down here further, you'll see that in your assignment 2 folder, you're going to have an index page, a login page, pages 1, 2, and 3, and then an error page. So you will have those turned in. Some initial page setup requirements for what we're doing. These are going to be important for you the entire semester. Because we are making all of our pages adhere to XML standards, the page needs to have the XML declaration at the top. But because it's PHP, we cannot put this less than question mark into a PHP file, because a PHP file is expecting this to be PHP code after that. So we've got to change it, and we won't use this line up here. Instead, we will use this line here, and you'll copy and paste that into your file as you begin each file. We will switch back and forth between the document type definitions that we'll use in this class. For right now, we're going to use a strict DTD. Later on, we'll use an HTML5 DTD, but for right now, you're going to copy and paste this DTD. You're also going to copy and paste this HTML line where it has the namespace, the language set, and you're also going to copy this meta tag that sets the character encoding and the content type. In general, all of your pages should adhere to the well-formatted constraints of XML. So things like all of your tags must be closed and all of your attribute values must be in double quotes are very important. And all of your formatting will be done using CSS. We will very sparingly do things using tags for formatting. So let's go ahead and look at a finished solution for what this assignment is going to have you doing. There's not a terrible lot to it. There's not a lot of design to it. All we want to do is introduce PHP and get you going on a simple assignment. So the way that it works is if I type garbage and hit login, I'm going to come to an error page. But what I want you to see is that I'm actually landing on a page that I created, error.php. And so basically what we've done is taken the 401 information that you would normally get from a web server, and we've modified it, and we are putting this link back into the default page. Whoops, I have a mistake there. I need to change that to index. My fault. It'll bring you back here. If you type the correct login, page 1, and the correct associated password, which is alpha, you'll wind up on this page. There's no back button, or there's no link back or anything. I just want you to land there. And again, what you're looking for is in the URL, you're landing on page1.php. So let's go ahead and go back. I'll hit the back button. I'll change this to page 2. And for the password, I'll put in beta. I hit login. I wind up on page2.php, as you can see, and I wind up on this screen. I'll go back once again, and for the last page, we'll do page 3 and gamma. And we wind up on this page with page3.php. there that we're using. So now, let's go ahead back to the instructions for the rest of the assignment. You're going to create a folder that you're going to put your assignment in. And that assignment is going to be located on our web server that we're using, which is cgtweb2.tech.purdue.edu/356/ this is the folder that I set up for you on the server. And then you're going to create a folder, and this is where all of your files will reside. So we'll start with index.php, and all of these files above will reside in that same folder. Here's some general information about each of the pages that we're going to create. We're going to start with index.php and lay that out. I'd like to note also that at the bottom of each of the assignments, I'm providing you with images of the code. The reason they are images is so that you're not able to copy and paste the code, but this is the entire code for the first page we're creating. And you can go through each of those and use them throughout the semester. And I'm going to read this because it's important. It says, here's the code for the entire exercise. Proper use would be look at the code to make sure you are not approaching the assignment the correct way. Then try to do it on your own. Use the code to make sure you've done it correctly. Improper use would be just copying without interpreting, which would result in you not really learning what you're doing. The code is provided to help you be successful, and so that you don't have to ask as many questions, and you're able to figure it out on your own. We do this on the assignments. The projects, however, are entirely yours to do. So there won't be code provided for the projects. But for this type of learning scenario, it's a good environment. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and go to Adobe Dreamweaver. If you Dreamweaver's our IDE of choice for this class. There are other editors that will work just fine, but throughout here you're probably going to see me using Dreamweaver more often than anything else. What I think you should do to start is make sure that your files is checked, and so that you can see it over here. And then in this drop down menu, you see I've got a lot of stuff there, but you want to go to Manage Sites and hit New, and you're going to put something along the lines of CGT 356. You could probably just leave it at that, but because I have so many of them, I'm just going to call it Assigns so that it's different from what I already have. And then click that little folder, and what you want to do is navigate to your mapped directory. So you should have already used your batch file and mapped your directory. Mine is going to look a little different than yours. So in mine, I can see everybody, and so I'm going to highlight that, but I've got so many things in here that what I'm going to do is I've got a subfolder where everything resides. So I'm going to hit select on that, and it's going to go to my mapped drive, my folder, and then I've got a subfolder for what I'm using. Yours would just be your mapped drive and your folder name. Hit save. Yes, you probably won't get that. And then hit done. Once you hit done, it should automatically load over here, and so anything we want to do, we can just work from that files directory. Now we need an Assign02 folder, so I'm gonna right click and say edit. No. Oh, it's right there. New folder, and I'm going to call it Assign02. And inside of that, I need a new file, so I'm going to come up to File, New. In my dialog box that comes up, I'm going to choose PHP down here at the bottom. I'm going to choose XHTML 1.0 strict to start with. We're going to change some things anyway, and then hit Create, and you'll see that your box here populates. I'm going to minimize the properties there. Under View, you can look at just the code in a page, you can look at code and design, you can look at just the design. For us, most of the time you're going to want to be in code and design or just code. We'll seldom find ourselves over here looking at just the design. So now that we've got that, we've got to go back and I'm going to give myself a little bit more room to type here. We've got to go back and get those initial page setup requirements taken care of. So let's come back here, and here are my page setup requirements, and I'm going to copy this line of code right here. I'm going to come back, and it's going to be the first thing inside of my document. Now I can't just paste it like that. You'll see that I've got errors there. So what I need to do is put a less than $PHP in front of it, and then at the end of it put a $greater than. And now my code is back to being proper. So this brings us to your delimiters in PHP are less than $PHP and then $greater than. Anything that goes inside of those two is PHP code, and you can intersperse it as much as you need to or want to throughout your entire page. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and do a save as. I'm going to put it in this folder, it's already there, and this is going to be index.php. Now that we've got that first page setup requirement, let's come back. I'm going to make sure that my doc type is what I want it to be, and I'm just going to replace that. I'll get rid of that one, I'll put that one in its place, and I am going to get rid of all the additional spaces. You don't have to, it'll work just fine this way, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab this line right here, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to replace this. And lastly, I'm going to grab this line right here, and it may be the same as this here, but I'm going to replace it anyway, and I'm not going to bother looking to see if it was the same or not. For our title, we'll do Assign02, and then I don't know why Dreamweaver puts a space there, but they should put a space here, and we'll go ahead and begin. So some of the first things we need here is just some initial forms that we can submit. I'm going to put a comment here just so you realize that this is not the correct way to lay out a form, and you will learn the correct way in the next assignment. So we're keeping this very simple. We're going to say open form, close form. So you open a tag, close a tag. Form ID equals, we're going to give it an ID of form 0. After that, each form needs an action. The action tells where to submit the data to. And in that, we're going to choose we're going to type login.php, which is one of the other pages you'll be creating. Each form also needs a method. The method is either get or post. Most of the time, it is post. Later in the semester, we'll get to some instances where it will be get, but most of the time it is post. Inside of this, let's put a div, and I'm going to do an internal style of position, absolute, top 100 pixels, left 200 pixels. Open the tag, close the tag. Inside of that, we'll put an H1. The H1 is more for accessibility requirements than anything else. So let's do a text align here to center it, and let's do a font size of 16 point. That closes our H1 there, and we're going to put index page in there. And again, accessibility requirements are for things like screen readers that are used on a page. The accessibility requirements state that there needs to be an H1 on every single page to meet those requirements. We'll put a couple of line breaks in there, and now we're going to lay out a table. And again, my caveat up above, this is not the correct way to use tables, but that's okay. We're going to do it this time, and then we'll switch in the next example. We'll give it a width of 350 pixels. We'll set the cell padding to 2, and we'll set the cell spacing also to 2. Inside of there we need a couple of rows. And inside of the table row, a couple of TD cells. Inside of that opening TD, we'll do a style attribute. Inside of there, text align. We'll right align it. Now we're going to place our labels and our text boxes inside of here. And I'm going to switch to view just code so I can fit more on here. And I need this basic layout for a couple of rows, but I'm going to go ahead and, before I copy and paste the second row, I'm going to go ahead and put a label in here. So we've got open and close label like this. The opening label tag has a for attribute that needs to be assigned. So we say for user ID. Now that user ID is going to appear on the next line as part of the input. So in the next line we're going to put an input. It is a standalone tag, so it closes itself, as you can see. We're going to say type equals text. We're going to give it a name of user ID. We're also going to give it an ID of user ID. We're going to set the size of it equal to 20 and the max length equal to 20. And so your full input tag should look like this. Type equal text, name equal, ID equal, size, and max length equal. You'll notice that this, and this are all identical in capitalization. Every form element has to have a name equals in order for the value to get sent to the next page. The ID is for JavaScript and CSS. The name is for the form submission to the next page. So now that we've got that one, we're going to take this and duplicate it. So that was for our login field. The next field is for our password. So we're going to do PASSWD, and we're going to change the text here to password. And similarly, we're going to change the name and the ID here to match all the way across. We can leave the size and the max length the same, that'll be fine. And lastly, we need one more. Input tag down at the bottom. This one, in addition to having that, we're going to do a call span equal to 2 because I got rid of that other TD tag there. The text align on this one we're going to set to center. And the second TD in each of these we're going to set to left. That way the text box butts right up against the label that's there. So we've got input type equal. It's not going to be text now, it's going to be submit. And then all you need is a value here. So we're going to get rid of these other attributes and do value equals and just put the word login in there. That's going to pretty well complete our page. I'm going to hit save here, and we're going to navigate to it in the browser to see what it looks like. So let's come over here, and I will go to the location of it, which is S, and then Assign02. And there my page loaded. And so you can see that I'm on the server. I've navigated to it in the browser. That's another important point. In order for your pages to work in this class, you have to actually navigate to them in the browser. So we've navigated to it. Our index page is loading. I can type index.php after this, and it'll give me the same look. Now, one of my pet peeves is when you come to a web page that you are clearly supposed to type into, but they have not bothered to give you the code to automatically place the insertion point, or IP, into that location. So what we are going to do is come back here, and below our form we're going to add a little script. So we'll do script type equals text/JavaScript, close script. Scroll down so that you can see it all. Now whenever we do JavaScript inside of our coding, you want to use an HTML comment inside of that. That is for our validators. You'll find that you'll get some errors in your JavaScript depending on what you're typing. It will cause the validator to throw some errors. So if you put an HTML comment right inside the opening and closing tags, you'll eliminate that. Inside of here, we'll do document.getElementById, and we are looking for user ID. You can see that it pops up there for us. So we've grabbed that element, user ID, and we're going to do .focus and end it with a semicolon. And that's all we're going to add there. And that will put the insertion point into this input with ID equals user ID. So that when it's blinking, or when it's loaded, you'll see it's not blinking there. And if I do a hard refresh, it automatically starts blinking there. Now let's go ahead and look at pages 1, 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and look at the code here. And there's some comments that I've put in here for you to read, and I'll read through them here. You don't have to necessarily type these comments into your code, but I try to provide them in the solutions that I give you to help you understand a few things. So first it says, notice the new line character. This is the new line character, \n. And then we've got, I've concatenated the new line character instead of adding it directly in. I did this to emphasize the new line character. It could just as easily be written immediately following each line. So we could get rid of a little bit, I'd say don't really worry about it. I'll talk about it a little bit as I go through this. Notice the escaping of the double quotes. So anywhere you see a double quote, there's a \/ in front of it. That's called an escape, which will allow that double quote to actually be written. Notice the alignment of the printed items, 5 spaces in front of the title, meta, etc. And then be sure to look at the resulting HTML after it loads in the browser. Make sure you view the source and see the results. So this assignment is more about learning the echo statement, or these 3 pages. You do not have to write it this way. In fact, we will, after this assignment, we won't write it this way, but there will be times that we echo out HTML like this. So I want you to know that it can be done, how it can be done, and that you need to escape certain things so that it works properly. Other than that, you wouldn't find yourself doing a page like this. So let's start by doing a normal page, and then we'll echo it out. You'll notice that PHP starts up here at the top, it ends down here at the bottom, so the entire thing is PHP. The echo statement means print to the browser. That's what we're doing. So let's come back to Dreamweaver, and inside of assignment 2 we need another new file, and this is going to be, oops, This is going to be page1.php. We'll go ahead and open that. And now we've got this beginning part once again. What I'm going to do is come back to this first page I created, and I'm going to copy this whole top part. Come over here and paste it. That way I don't have to do quite as much again. And then inside of here, if we come back and look, we've got this pretty well taken care of. This. All we want to do is put an H1 in there that says welcome to the alpha page. So let's come down here to where the body is. And close that out. And I also want to add a background image. So I'll show you here that I've grabbed some images. All I did was go to Google Images and searched for an alpha, beta, and gamma image and saved those as JPEGs. So they're in an images directory. If we come back here, I'm going to do a style and do background image with the URL. And in that URL, we can flip here so that you can see how it's put in there if you haven't used it before. But it's images/alpha.jpg semicolon, and we'll do background repeat, no repeat, semicolon, and that should put a image for us. Let's go ahead and come back to our assignment 2, and these are the pages that I've created. So I'm going to change this index.php to page1.php, and we can see my finished page here. Now we've done that, let's go ahead and change it to the echoes that we need for the assignment. So that first one is done for us. And what I am going to do, which maybe I shouldn't do for the example, but I'm going to go ahead and do a copy and paste. I'm going to come down here along the side and get my echoes in place. And then I'm going to, well, I actually need to move this. I forgot about that. So we need to grab that, cut it, come down here to the bottom and paste it. So we open our PHP here, close it down here, and we need a closing after each one of these lines. This isn't going to fix everything, but it's going to fix a few things. Scroll to the right here to get this, oops, to get this one on the end. Now we've still got some problems, mostly because of the double quotes. Now wherever there's a double quote, I'm going to put a backward slash. You'll see that things changed there. Here's a double quote. Here's a double quote. You'll see that things change as you make your way through there. There's a double quote. But the confusing part may be you don't escape that last one, right? It's the inner double quotes that you escape. So that very last one matches up with this very first one. But if they're inside, if they're nested inside, that is where you want to escape them. But not that one. Okay? Not that one. Come down here, we've got a couple more. Not that one. Come through here, and we've got to do body style equals, and now our code is correct. So now let's go ahead and save this and see if it looks the same. So we'll come back into Chrome and we'll go back to page1.php, and it looks the same. Now let's do a view source on this. And here's what the view source looks like. So this is what we want to change and organize a little bit better. And that's what our new line characters are going to take care of for us. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And let's come back to what we see here. We see at the end of each one of these we've got a period and then a new line character after every one of these lines. And that's what we got to concatenate on. So concatenation is the process of combining two strings together into one. So if you had hello as a string and world as a string and you concatenate them together, you would get hello world. So in PHP, the concatenation operator is the period, which is not the most intuitive thing, but that's what we use in PHP. In most other languages, it's a plus sign. So in PHP, it's the period. So what we're going to do is concatenate that onto the end of each one and then look at the resulting output once again. So here we're going to do concatenate with another string \n. So we've added that on the first one, and then I'm going to copy it and concatenate it onto all of these others. And you'll notice that it goes inside of the parenthesis. I'm going to save that, Control S. I'm going to go back to Chrome, and I'm going to do a refresh of this page. I'm going to do a view page source once again, and you'll notice how now the source is actually formatted on that page by using the new line character. And that's all we were doing there. With that, we have done the alpha page. Let's go ahead and add to this title dash alpha page so that it actually changes in the heading. And we'll do an F5, and now you'll see Assign02 dash alpha page. And we are ready to do the other pages. So I'll leave that URL visible. And let's come back to here. We've got page 1, and so what we want to do is just duplicate that. So I'm going to come out here, it's a little easier. There's page 2. There's page 3. Let's come back in here. This little refresh icon, we'll hit that. We'll see page 2 and page 3 pop up. I'll go ahead and open both of those. I'll pull this down a little bit so that you can see my pages open. So I've got page 1, which we're on, page 2 and page 3 are open, but we need to make some minor changes. So page 2 needs to become the ETA page, and this here needs to go beta, and this image needs to become beta, and save it. Page 3 becomes gamma. And save it. And then come back to Chrome, and all we're going to do is change the 1 to a 2, and then change the 2 to a 3. And it looks like everything is working fine. We'll view the page source. Everything is organized. We have the correct words in the right places. And so now that we've done that, our next step is to do this login functionality. Now it's a little bit longer, but don't worry about that too much, because it'll go fairly quickly. We're going to start by doing this larger piece, and then collapse it down, and then collapse it down further. Only one of them is actually going to execute, but it's a good exercise for you to know and understand that there are slightly different ways to do if statements and logical operations. So we'll create login.php and we'll open that. Once that's open, I'll do a Control A and delete. We don't need anything in there. I'll do a less than question mark PHP and a question mark greater than. This is a pass-through page or a processing page, whichever you'd like to call it. It does not get seen in the browser. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and save it real quick. And I'm going to expand this up just a little bit so more code will appear on the screen. Now the first thing we need to do is get the variables from the previous page. So in order to do that, we will create our own variable. Variables in PHP begin with a $sign. And I'll say $user ID, I just made that up, it could have been anything, equals, this part I'm not making up, $_post. That is how we get our variables from the previous page. End it with a semicolon. Now, you'll remember on index.php we said method equals post. Because we said method equals post, on this page you'll see that we have our action going to login.php. So it is posting to login.php. When we come to login.php, we have to use _post in order to get those variables. The value that goes here, let me actually bring my file names back into view for you. The value that goes here is the name that is in the input tag, and that was also user ID. And I usually keep them all the same so that it's not confusing. So this user ID has to be the same as this, name equals. It has to be the same as name. Now because I've named them all the same, there's no issue there. But if you happen to name them differently, it has to be the same as name equals. So we've got user ID on that page and user ID on this page. Next line. $_post. Those are the two variables that are getting passed to us. So first we're going to do the long way, and I'm going to call this example 3. In example 3, we're going to do an if statement, and in that we're going to say if the user ID is equal to page 1. The comparison operator in PHP is a double equal sign. So if it is equal to page 1, and I'm going to put curly brackets there. Those are curly brackets. They're not square brackets. They're not parentheses. After that, I'm going to do an else if the user ID is equal to page 2, curly brackets, else if, you'll see I forgot something there. Hopefully you've noticed it already. We need a $sign in front of that user ID. And then at the end we're going to have an else to end it. So we're going to have our outside if statement say if the user ID is equal to page 1 or to page 2 or to page 3. Now let's just look at one of these. So we're concentrating right here. And inside of there we're going to put a nested if statement. And inside of that we'll say if the password is equal to alpha. We'll put an if else in there. If the password is equal to alpha, we want to take the user to page1.php. We do that with what's called a header redirect. So we start by typing header. Inside of it goes double quotes. and then you do location colon followed by the page you would like to go to, page1.php. Now, if that password is wrong though, you likewise do a header redirect, but instead of going to page 1, you send them to error.php. So we can say now, if the user ID is page 1 and the password is alpha, send them to page1.php. But if it's page 1 and the password is not alpha, send them to error.php. Now, we can copy this and paste it here and paste it here. But the password needs to be beta for page 2 and it needs to be gamma for page 3. Here we're going to page 2, here we're going to page 3, and lastly this final else has to have this header redirected. And that is the complete long approach to doing it. And just to show that it works, we can do a Control S. We'll come back here to our page that we've been using. Let's give this a refresh, and now what we want to do is type page 1 and ALPHA. And you'll see that it passed through the login page and it landed us on page1.php. You'll never see that login.php actually appear, but that should not appear. So what we need to do is make a quick trip back, look at our index page, come here and say input type equal password. So input type equal password on the one that says name and ID equals passwd. And then we'll come back to here, refresh it, and you'll see that whatever is typed in there is now no longer visible. So now that we've done that, we can make this, we can shrink this down quite a bit, because there's a little bit better way to write this. So we called that example 3, I'm going to call this example 2, and in this example I'm going to start with this first if statement here, but instead of nesting if statements, what I'm going to do is group them together and do what's called a logical AND. Because we can check for user ID and password all at the same time in the same if statement. So if the user ID equals page 1 and the password equals alpha, then go to page 1. And then we can continue this down with the else ifs. And actually, I'll just copy that. I need an else in front of this. And instead of page 1, it becomes page 2. And instead of alpha, it becomes beta. And I can copy this and change this to page 2. I can copy this again, and instead of page 2, it's page 3. And gamma. And lastly, we still want that else on the end. And this one's going to go to error.php. So now we just list error.php in one location. So we do these 3 Boolean and, or logical ands, I'm sorry. We do these 3 logical ands for page 1 in alpha, page 2 in beta, page 3 in gamma. And those both have to be true in order to go to one of these pages. Now, that's example 2. But because each one of these only has one line in it, we can collapse that down further. So what I'm going to do is copy this, and I do want you to do all 3 of these in your code. and we are just going to get rid of the brackets. You can only do this if there is one and only one line in the if statement. So this is a fully completed solution right here. I do want you to type out all 3 examples and have that in your solution. Understand that I can leave this just like it is, and nothing below this line is going to execute, because this if statement is going to handle whatever is there. So let's go ahead and test it. We'll come back to Chrome. Let's refresh this page, although we don't need to. And let's again go to page 1 and alpha. We land there. Let's come back and go to page 2 and beta. We land there. And finally page 3 and gamma. We land there. And the last thing is if we type garbage in either of them. Now, we were directed to error.php, as you can see there highlighted, but we have not created error.php yet. So let's go back and look at error.php code. Now there's a decent amount of styling that's in this one. And so this is just plain HTML with the exception of this XML version up here. You can copy and paste this into place. We use a table layout, which is a poor layout, but again, we'll change that in the next assignment. You've got your H1 here, you've got your paragraph here that you can go through. And the main thing that you're going to put in here is this anchor tag. Yours will need to say index.php right there. That's where mine failed earlier. So you'll need to put index.php there with default page highlighted. And if you remember from the solution, your page is going to wind up looking like this. It's going to be formatted, and this should take you back to index.php. So I don't think I need to go through this necessarily with you. There's no new PHP on this page. It's entirely HTML layout, and that will complete your assignment for this. The last things you're going to want to do are look at validation before you turn it in. So for the validation, what I like to use is Firefox. And what you want to do is in Firefox, in the first assignment, I requested that you get the Web Developer Toolbar, which is this one going across here, and you see that we've got 3 check marks. And I'll bring this down. You'll see that we're on our assignment 2 page. You'll see that I've got 3 check marks going across here, and you'll also notice down here that I've got this green circle with a check mark in it. That's the important validation one that you want to check before you turn it in. So looking at index.php, I come down here, I click this once. That's a little larger than I expected. Bring this into view. And this is the screen that's going to pop up from Firefox. You're going to see results, 0 errors, 0 warnings. That's what you want to see. If there is an error, it's going to be in this lower left box, and you'll be able to click on it and it will highlight it up here. If we close that, let's go to page 1 and alpha. Down here at the bottom, you want to see that green circle. Let me bring this up and in a little bit. You want to see that green circle with a check mark in it. We double click it, we'll see 0 errors, 0 warnings. Let's check the second page. You have to do it on every single page. That page validates. This page validates. And I didn't create the error page for you, but when you finish it, it should validate. and there's no way to check the login page, so don't worry about that. If it's a pass-through page, you don't have to worry about the validation because it's not displaying. But this is a way to check yourself, to check your homework before you turn it in, because if there are errors down here, you're going to miss points. So make sure that you have the HTML validator loaded down here. I've got status-4-EVAR, which puts this at the bottom, and then I've got HTML validator, which is this little icon here, and you're going to have to Google for that. So rather than using the add-ons, you'll have to go to Google and type in HTML validator for Firefox and load it that way. So that completes the assignment for assignment 2. I will see you next time.